Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a look at completing the square. Now, we've already talked about how you have an x plus, I don't know, 2 and an x minus 5, and we need to put those together. Now, of course, to put those together, we're going to FOIL, first, outer, inner, last. So, first times first, x squared, outer times outer, negative 5x. Inner times inner is plus 2x, and last times last is negative 10. If I simplify that, x squared minus 3x minus 10 works out really, really nicely, and that's putting it together. Now, what we want to do is we want to actually say, what if I have x squared plus 4x plus blank? Now, what I want to do is I want to put something in that blank that would allow me to make this two factors where they each have the same number in it, and I could write them as x plus something squared because I'm going to have two of the exact same thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a perfect square. Now, the idea to this is if I have x plus 1 and x plus 1, it's going to follow a similar pattern every time. First times first, x squared, plus 1x, plus 1x, plus 1. So you add the two middle terms, and the last term is a multiply, as always, but you'll notice you'll always be adding the same thing. If I said x minus 7, x minus 7. Now, it only works if they're all exactly the same. If they're all exactly the same, this becomes completing the square or a perfect square. So let's take a look here. X times x, x squared, minus 7x, minus 7x, plus 49. And again, I get two of the same numbers in the middle, which allow me to say x squared plus 2x plus 1, so it's exactly twice as big as each of these. Here it's x squared minus, well, that's going to be minus 14x, again, twice as big as those, plus 49. So the thing about it is, how do I make some number here that would allow this to be a perfect square? Well, remember, they have to add up to 4. What number could I do? What numbers could I use to break 4 up into that it's going to be totally the same? What times itself makes 4? I'm sorry, what plus itself makes 4? What plus itself makes 4? Well, obviously 4 breaks into 2x and 2x, so I would need a 2 here and a 2 here, so that when I multiply it through, I get 2x, 2x, but when I multiply the last two, I get 4. So I would say x squared plus 4x plus 4 allows me to break it into x plus 2 and x plus 2, meaning x plus 2 squared. Now, let's do something a bit more difficult. X squared plus 9x. I'm sorry. Scratch that. Let's go to the next page. X squared plus 6x plus blank. Now, in this case, you'll notice, unlike the 4 where the 2 happens to work for addition and multiplication, here, if I were to break this up, x squared plus something, if I broke this in half, 3x and 3x, that would be the two numbers that would make 6, but that means 3 times 3 is 9. So 9 goes here. X plus, how would I make a 3x? X times 3. How would I make another 3x? X times 3. And then when I multiply the last two bits, it makes 9. So having a 9 here would allow us to create a perfect square. I want you to do a couple here and see what you can come up with to break them up. X squared plus 12x plus blank, x squared plus 14x plus blank. See what you come up with. Now, additionally, what we really want to do is we want to use this to solve. X squared plus 2x equals 7. Now, here's the problem. I cannot move that 7 across and solve. So what I need to do is I need to figure out how could I break this up into parts. Well, I'm going to need to add a number here to be able to break it up into parts. What number would I add right here to break it up into parts? Well, 2x splits into 1x and 1x, so it's going to be x plus 1 and x plus 1. Now, folks, we can't just randomly, 1 times 1 is 1. I can't randomly put a 1 just on one side of the equation. I have to balance it by putting it on the other side of the equation, so it equals 8. That means x plus 1. I got 2 of them, so x plus 1 squared equals 8. Now, at this point, how could I get x by itself? That's where we're going. How do I get x by itself? The answer is, to get rid of a squared, I would square root. If I square root a square, they cancel out, leaving x plus 1, and I have the square root of 8. Now, I can subtract 1, so x equals the square root of 8 minus 1. Now, let's break this up. 2, 4, 2, 2. X equals, I got a pair of 2's with a leftover 2. And so my answer would be plus or minus 2 root 2 minus 1. I want you, well, let's do another example here. Let's go down and say x squared plus 6x equals 5. Now, we're going to need to figure out a way to figure out what to put in here to make some nice pretty factors. I'm going to say x and x, and I'm going to say plus and plus. And what would 6 break into? Well, there's a little pattern. Divide 6 by 2 and you get 3 and 3. That's what goes here and here. But to make sure you know what to put in, you say 3 times 3 equals 9. But if I add 9 to one side, I must add 9 to the other. So I get 14. X plus 3, the quantity squared, because I have 2 of them, equals 14. What do I do to get rid of a square? Square root. X plus 3 equals the plus or minus of root 14 minus 3 minus 3. X equals plus or minus root 14 minus 3. And that's my answer. All right, let's go and have you attempt a couple problems. 6x plus x squared minus 2 equals 0. Problem here is, first of all, if I try sorting it out, x squared plus 6x minus 2 equals 0. Can I break it up the way it is? X and x. And then I say 2 and 1 and plus and minus, and well, there's no way that makes 6. I could come over here and say A, B, C, and I could do the quadratic formula. Opposite of 6 plus or minus the square root of 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 2 all over 2 times 1. But then I got to work this whole problem. So I could do the factor method. I could do the quadratic formula method, or I could complete the square. Now, to complete the square, we would say x squared plus 6x plus blank, and let's move that 2 to the other side by adding 2. Now, I break this up, and I'm going to say x. What does 6x break into? 3, 3, but 3 and 3 make 9. If I add 9 to one side, I add 9 to the other, and that makes 11. X plus 3, the quantity squared, equals 11. Square root both sides. X equals plus or minus root 11 minus 3, and that's your answer. It's a lot quicker than this if you know what you're doing. So that is basic completing the square, and we'll go from there.